Okay, now it's live. Thanks.
Great. All right, everybody, welcome. We'll go ahead and we'll call the meeting to order at 5:07 p.m. We'll start the meeting off tonight with a motion to approve our agenda for the evening.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Okay, and roll call since we're virtual.
Phil Desutter, aye.
Vicki Ludwigson, aye.
Eric Rod, aye.
Mary Lawrence, aye. Okay, the agenda is approved for our meeting tonight. So the only agenda item for us to address is our NASDAQ presentation for our superintendent search process. So I'd like to thank our guests, Carol and Michael, for being with us tonight. And we're looking forward to hearing more about this process so that we can start our journey. So at this point, can I turn it over to you guys to start your presentation?
Yes, Caroline, are you take it? You're on mute. You need to unmute, Caroline.
All right, thank you. Both Michael and my name is Carolyn Burke. I'm a senior search consultant with NASDAQ, and Michael Palladino is also a senior search consultant with NASDAQ, and we're going to be working as your search team. So I will sort of take the lead in this orientation session, just have one of us speaking, but Michael will jump in. He's done just as many searches, and we will both provide you with our email addresses and our phone numbers, and anytime during the search, we'll choose a liaison tonight, but anytime during the search that any of you have any questions, you can talk to the liaison or even call direct, and we will try to make sure that you feel as comfortable and listen to all of your input. So this is just the beginning of a friendship, I hope, and a relationship with you, so that the search at the end is something that you feel was done well and that you really were leading, because it is not the NASDAQ search. It is your role, and probably the most important one that you have, to choose the superintendent. So we will facilitate that process. We'll be behind the scenes doing scheduling, doing training, doing outreach and recruitment and advertising, but we will not influence your choice. We will ensure that you have opportunities to interview, to learn about your candidates, and we'll talk to you about how to ask questions. We'll train screening committees, but then the decision will be yours in a public meeting, and we can talk about some strategies for that. So for tonight, I don't know how many of you have ever gone through a search before, and I know that Art Betancourt did a presentation, but I thought I would just take a minute, and I want to say to anyone, Vicki, the chair, stop me. If I'm going over information you know, and it's taking too long and you want it to move along, you just say, Carolyn, I think we've got that. So just move it along, and Michael will jump in. Sometimes I'll cue him, but Michael, jump in when you think that needs be.
Yep.
Okay, with that said.
You're doing great so far, Carolyn.
He's funny. Okay, so the very first thing we do is have this meeting with you. And hopefully when we walk away from this meeting, you've made some decisions. And if you're not able to make them tonight, as soon as possible, we'll talk to you about how to configure yourself to get some information to us about, do you want focus groups? Do you want X? Who do you want us to do focus groups with? That type of thing. And we're going to talk about that whole overview of the process tonight. And I'm aware that we have an hour, so I'm going to try to keep it moving. If I'm moving too fast, ask me to slow down, just jump in. So the first thing we're going to do is advertise the position. And in your packet is an announcement letter that we did as a draft. It's toward the back, but we're not going to look at it now. But we need to get that announcement back, a letter back from you. And it's when we get it back from you, it'll go right up. We'll make the changes that you suggest, do the additions that you suggest. We'll send it back for final approval, and then that's when we begin to advertise the position. So we're going to be in a short timeline for that. We'll probably need it by next week because you want to start out with your recruiting. You want to start out with your advertising. That it's sort of a go fast and slow down a little bit. We'll put the advertisements up, and we do the advertisements on the superintendent and school board's websites, on NESDEC's website, on school council websites across. We advertise in School Spring. We advertise in Top Jot, which is the Ed Week version. I mean, the electronic version of Ed Week. It's in you'll see in the proposal that we put to the district, we outline where we advertise, and it's extensive advertising. NESDEC also has a board of directors of 16-member board of directors, and it consists of superintendents from all the New England states. And we call them because they have their finger on the pulse of their state and what's going on, and we talk to them about the position, and they make recommendations, and they ensure that it's pushed out through their networks. So we do extensive advertising. So the first thing we're going to be asking you for is, well, two things. For you to choose who is going to be our liaison. Have you made any decisions about that? If it's going to be one person or two person that we will talk to, and then they will reach out to you, and however it goes, so that we're not calling all school committee members, that we have one person who would work with us. Have you made any decisions about that? We've been working with Vicki.
Yeah, so this is really our first opportunity to discuss it as a committee. So that's kind of one of, I think, the ideas of the meeting tonight is that we'll be able to discuss and make some of these decisions.
Do you want to discuss it now, or would you like me to keep going?
No,
I think Vicki's great first.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to continue to serve in that capacity.
Okay,
Carol,
so I would go ahead.
I just want to say, if it's going to be you, Vicki, to follow up on what Carolyn was talking about, is it's very important that the rest of the committee work through Vicki. So if you have any questions, but Vicki, you should feel comfortable calling either Carolyn or me at any point. If for one reason you can't reach one of us, or we can't get back to you right away and you need something, but you should feel comfortable reaching out to either one of us. But it's important that everybody else go through Vicki, just so we keep the communication flowing.
Right. And unless it's just you have a question you just want to ask, and that's fine. We want, it's formal and it's informal. All right. So with that said, before you convene, before you close the meeting, you should make a decision about when that letter, we'd like to have it. This is Tuesday. We'd like to have it by next Tuesday. So it would be, we have times when we suggest you work through your administration, your central office, because we're asking for things like, what's the budget? What are some things that the district is proud of? And sometimes the high school principal or some of the people in the district can say, oh, remember we were up for this award, or the children did outstanding work here or there. So you want to put in a few things that the district is really proud of. And then we have other questions. They're in there in red. Or you can say, you know what? I don't like this letter at all. This is what we want. And you just go ahead. We did a draft, and that's all it is a draft. We also did a draft timeline that we're going to look at in a minute. And that lays out the dates that we have for the search. It's 120 days. That you want to take a look at. We can, if we have time, we'll look at it tonight too, and note areas that you might say, well, that seems long, or that seems faster, could we move? And then we'll try to make those adjustments. So we're going to talk about also tonight community outreach. While the advertisement is out there, we're doing community outreach because ultimately we want to decide who is the best match for your district. So for MURSD, we want to say who would be the best fit. We want for you to be able to think about that. And so we ask whatever community members you want. We run focus groups, and generally that's administrators, teachers, parents. Some districts do students and community members. I think, you might think about doing parent community, however you want it. We expect 4 or 5 focus groups. If you want more, there's a fee for that, but we can really discuss it before. We're not going to nitpick over those kinds of things, because we'll help you once you decide whom you'd like to run focus groups for. Then we will show you an example of how to schedule them. In your packet are sample letters to announce it. We'll talk to you about the needs for setting up the focus groups, how to do that. So we'll walk you through the whole process. You just have to determine who you'd like. This also will run the same prompts that we use at the focus groups. We'll set up online in an online survey. The online survey has a little bit more to it. They have to choose between their top 5 choices for skills in a superintendent or something, and then they can answer open-ended. They can skip whatever they want. They can just go to the open-ended. Some people who go to focus groups, when they're driving home, they say, oh, I should have said this. They can go online. Our purpose is not to restrict access, but to grant as much access as possible. We want people to feel that they have had a chance to have some input. So we want to be generous with the times and access. All that information comes to Michael and to me. And we provide you with all of the raw data. We say, this is anonymously, of course, this is what teachers said, this is what administrators said, this is what parents said in their enroll-alike groups. What we do is we take that data and we look for themes, and we cluster the themes, and we see if any come through all of the groups and rise to the surface. And we say that your district is looking, of course, for a superintendent who is skilled across the board. You don't want big gaps. You want a competent and confident superintendent across the board. But there are some areas where he or she must be very skilled, have some real deep knowledge and experience, be really able to show you good examples that they've done this, have some real background in this area. And we'll tease that out through the community input. We'll bring that to you, the results of all of that to you, and meet with you again like this in our Google Docs or however you do it, and we'll go through that document. You'll have had it ahead of time, and you'll come back and say, I read it, but I would add this from my perspective, or I might change this over here. There'll be a process that we'll go through so that when you're done with that, that is not all of the background data. That's not, we don't put that out, but you will be left with maybe a 3 or 4 page document called the Successful Candidate Profile. And it will say that our district is looking for somebody who is very skilled or deeply skilled in these 3 or 4 areas with indicator bullets of what that means to your community. That profile is put out by the school committee. That's the school committee's Successful Candidate Profile. And that goes to the screening committee. Now, a screening committee is appointed by you as the school committee, and it's considered a subcommittee of the school committee. And we always say that there should be 1 or 2 school committees, 2 school committee members on the screening committee as the chair and co-chair or co-chairs or however you want to do it. But it then becomes a group of equals, and there may be 12 people, there may be 18. The reason I say maybe is because we recommend 12, and we've never in a search, I've been doing this for almost 12 years, had 12 people. We always have 18. So I just say 12 to 18 and then say, please listen to the 18 as the outside, but sometimes it's more, and then it becomes a little awkward. I mean, a little bit difficult to juggle. But when we're thinking about the screening committee, they have one role only, and that's the preliminary screening of applications. They're not choosing the superintendent. They're not, their decision is to make some decisions about whom they present to you for further consideration. At any point in the process, you as committee members have access to all of the applications, but you cannot discuss them between yourselves or among yourselves. You can't say the name in public. During the preliminary screening process, that is done in executive session by the screening committee, and that's where they have an initial interview. They'll get all the applications for the position. They'll work with Michael and me through a process of deliberation to choose whom they'd like to interview. We work with them to schedule all of the interviews. We do all of that legwork. They interview the candidates. They have the profile that you've written as their lens to write where they're hearing it, where they're not. We go through that. They have the profile as their lens when they're developing their questions. So they can look at, find the best match to the profile. We come back after they've done their interviews, and we go through the process again, and they decide which candidates are going to move forward. Now, with your guidance, you might say, we want 4. We want no less than 4, or we want 3 or 4. You'll tell us how many you want. If they can't find 4 that they absolutely love, then we'll tell you that they have 3 that they all think would make a good superintendent, and they weren't able to do 4. Or if they have 5, we'll tell you that they couldn't narrow it down. Their role is just that. It's a lot of work, and when you're thinking about who's going to be on the screening committee, when we go through the timeline, you're going to see that it's over the holidays, so that people have to have time free. Because if I were meeting with you now, and we were trying to do a schedule for the interviews, and I'd say, okay, Monday night, the 5th, I can't do any Monday nights. Somebody else can't do any Tuesday nights. Somebody can't do, and then all of a sudden you're talking about a screening committee where not everybody is present for the interviews. So we'll talk to you about when you put out your invitation letter. There might be some people who would really and dearly love to be on the screening committee, but they aren't able to make that time commitment. Their life won't allow it. That's why we want to make sure that there's a lot of other opportunities for them to have input. All right, so the screening committee will present you with your finalists. Then you'll sit down with Michael and me again, and you will decide, if you have 5 candidates, are you going to invite them all to the district? And we'll be talking to Vicki about this. We won't spring it on you. How are you going to set it up? Are you going to have them spend a day in the district with an interview with the school committee? Or if you have 5, are you going to interview them first and then decide who's going to then move on to the day in the district? We'll talk to you about how to set those up. So we'll do a complete orientation with you to make sure that at every step of the way, you feel prepared and that we stay on time. Any questions about that? Okay. So let's, if you want to look at this, I think it's this second or third page where you have the timeline. I don't know if you can pull it up. It looks like this document. You don't actually need it in front of you. But the first item is this meeting that we're having, the orientation meeting with the school committee. And then we're going to have, do you anticipate this position starting on July 1? The new superintendent to start on July 1? Have you talked about that?
I think that's what we discussed, right?
Yeah, I think that's our goal.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Not sooner, sure.
Well, you can know who he or she is.
yeah, I think we're looking to run the process as rapidly, or I should say as efficiently
Right.
as possible in order to do it in the right way. But so we can get a decision in place, but that may be that person can't start until the 1st of July.
Okay. So we'll put on the letter. When you look at the letter, it says start date. You may want to say July 1. We usually put July 1. If you want to put a sentence about or sooner, but I would maybe just for the initial advertisement leave July 1 because that's a safe bet. You have somebody in place until then. We're hoping, though, that you appoint the superintendent in early January. So that allows the time for the advertisement to be out there. We say 6 weeks, let the position perk through and people get their paperwork in. And then for the screening committee to meet, for it to do its initial interviews. And then you have holiday breaks in there. You have time over Thanksgiving, time over the winter break, so that, and then it comes back to you probably right after. You'll get the names of the finalists probably right after the winter break, like the beginning of January, the way it is now. So you need to look at the timeline and get any suggestions or ideas to Vicki so that she can talk them over with Michael and me if you want to make adjustments. We won't do that at this meeting unless you choose to. I'll give you a chance to look it over and think about it. Michael, what were you going to say? You good? Okay. So going through this timeline, it lays out what I talked about. All the applications, they'll go into School Spring, but that goes directly to NESDEC. We do the work. There's an absolutely spectacular, and don't think about stealing her from us, administrative assistant at NESDEC called Christina. And she will take these applications and she will she'll put them up online in a locked site that only screening committee members can access. So if you're going to want access, you'll have to call us and we can, give you access. Okay. So they get every application. We don't pre-screen. If we know about a candidate and they ask us and they say, we've been hearing about Sally, if we know something, we will tell them because it's an executive session. So all they can do is Google or go into what's in the public sector. They cannot call any references. They cannot just speak to anybody about who has applied. If you have an internal candidate, they can't out that person. Now, the internal candidate might run all around the district saying, I applied, but the screening committee cannot confirm nor deny. And that's forevermore because those take place in executive session. Okay. Okay. Then, so that's basically the process. The finalists will be announced. We will help you we'll help the screening committee. They will come to a school committee meeting. Again, probably some among you will be on the screening committee. Then you come to the school committee and you read the letter and announce the finalists. As soon as the screening committee votes whom to move forward, they are disbanded, or whatever you call a subcommittee. They no longer, but they go back into the community and they don't give up their voice or their opportunity to have input, but they can no longer speak for the screening committee nor divulge what was discussed in those deliberations. When you have your finalists, we'll be talking to you about how do you want to do it? If you have, some people have the candidate, like if I were a candidate, I'd be on Zoom and you could ask questions. Some want the person in the district. Some want both. They want the person to come and meet a school committee member and an administrator and travel the district and then go on Zoom during the pandemic, go on Zoom for the questions, and we can talk about all of that. And we will help you have response sheets so people can watch or people can engage and then get their feedback to you. Some communities actually put the interview with the school committee on the town TV, and people can send in, can send in responses to that. So we'll be talking to you about all of those options. And then you will have a meeting. Oh, you'll be the ones calling references because by that time the names will be public. And we will guide you through, we'll ask them for names, we'll give you names. We'll be doing some background checks, not query checks. We just call districts, we call people we know, is there anything here we need to get out in front of, and all of that. So and we check credentials. We make sure that they have the degrees they say they have and have worked where they say they've worked. But we will be talking to you about who's going to make reference calls for each of the candidates, because you all can't pick up the phone and call the person's superintendent or call the person's chair of the school committee. We'll say who's going to call for Joe, who's going to call for Bill, who's going to call for Sally, who's going to call for Mary, that kind of thing. And we'll talk to you about ways that you can discuss input from that, and ways that you can deliberate online without besmirching anybody's professional reputation, because all of these people are working people. They all have jobs, and they don't want, if you say, well, I thought that Carolyn was particularly weak in this area, and I can't believe she even applied because she doesn't even have a background in this or whatever it is. A better way to say it might say, I thought Michael did a spectacular job on special education, and I wasn't hearing that from Carolyn. So I really, in my opinion, would focus on Michael, that type of thing, which is a little bit different from saying, sheesh, why did she bother? So you have that. What would you like to go through? I tried to go through really fast. Now, how would you like to do this? Would you like to discuss particular things, make some decisions tonight? What would you like to do? I'll ask Vicki.
I guess in terms of the screening committee, if you could just kind of talk us through a little bit about what like the composition of the screening committee looks like. I know you said like 1 to 2 school committee members. So, but beyond that, like what a typical screening committee, because in my mind, I'm already ballooning like closer to the 18. So
yeah,
when I think about admin and teachers and parents.
It's very hard to narrow it down. There's 2 ways to do it. You can think about teachers, administrators, but you also need to put an overlay of a map of expertise. For instance, you want 3 teachers, for instance. Do you want 1 elementary, 1 secondary, 1 special educator, that type of thing? It's worth having a conversation about, like, what types of expertise do you want? Then don't pick the teachers. We always recommend, you can, it's your search, but our recommendation is you go to whomever, the union rep or whoever it is, and say, we need 3 teachers and we'd like this type of, and let teachers pick their own reps at the table. The same way with administrators. Don't have a lopsided, don't let teachers sit in the screening committee and say, oh, it's all parents, or administrators sit there and say it's all teachers. What you want is to look for balance and expertise. So a lot of times groups will have, say, 2 principals and a central office person. So 3 teachers, 3 administrators. Then they'll have 3 parents, somebody from the elementary, somebody from the secondary, maybe somebody from special education parent groups, or however it is. And I'm just using that. I'm certainly not saying you might have another group that you prefer. I'm just giving an example. And you ask the parents, like the PTOs, to choose their own reps. Then you might say, do we or do we not want student representation? And generally those are high school students. It is a large time commitment. So sometimes you think it's an honor and they think it's a bit of a chore, but you can think that through. And then you might say, gee, there's real expertise in the community. We'd love to have, if they have the time to serve, we'd like a selectman or we'd like a this. And think, each of you sort of knows where you think your superintendent needs some expertise. So you might say, I think we should need to have somebody from the finance committee on here. Or I think we need X, so that when they're listening for answers, they can say, that sounded good, but there was no meat to that, or wow, or there might be somebody from technology. So that's what you need to think, both you might say one of the teachers should have some real tech background, or however it is, or one of the administrators, or one of the parents sometimes has really good tech background. So it's that kind of, it takes a lot of thought, and we have suggestions in your packet. And we can talk to, you can have your questions to Vicki. We can talk to Vicki. Sometimes people have at-large positions from the community, and people submit their application, and they say, I really want to be part of it because I have, or you can say, we're looking for somebody who has a real background in technology or educational technology or something, and people say, I do. But you want to remove yourself a little bit from saying, yes, Phil, you and no, Sean. You want to remove a little yourselves from picking people. Sometimes it can appear arbitrary. But we'll talk to Vicki about that. There's no rush on that. Their first meeting, although you have to give them notice, but their first meeting, you'll see on the calendar, they're going to meet on November 16th. So we would, and we have that you'll have chosen them. Screening committee selection will be made by November 9th. Now, because it's the holiday season, you might say, we want to give them a little more lead time. You might want to back that up a little bit so that people have a chance to clear their schedules, because they're going to be meeting, like this is, unless we as a school committee change them, they're going to be meeting on the 16th of November and the 19th of November. And those are 2 training sessions that we go through with them on how to write questions, how to use the profile, how to do this, how to do that, all of that. And it's really important that they're there. Does that answer your question, Vicki? It's organizing yourselves to make those decisions. And would you, and are you going to put it on the agenda of a school committee meeting? How are you going to do it? That. But we'd like you to take a look at the timeline between now and next Tuesday, and take a look at the letter between now and next Tuesday, because those 2 things will be following them. And everybody gets busy. Now, Michael and I, we like to do something. We like to say, look down in January. You're going to get the names on your personal and professional calendars. You're going to get the names of the candidates probably the finalists will be announced to you approximately December 21st. Then in January, the early part of January, you're going to have to, right during budget season, interview and have days in the district. So in your next school committee meeting or shortly thereafter, you might want to do a calendar search among yourselves and say, let's set aside you might use 2 nights and have 2 candidates a night, but let's set aside 3 nights to interview candidates. When can we do it? That first, you look at the timeline, that early in January, when can we do it? So, because that's sometimes where the process slows down, and you want your district to be competitive. You want your district, you don't want to have your finalist names out there, because other districts, it's human nature. They listen to who's a finalist somewhere. And if they're looking at the same candidate, they speed up their search. And we'll be saying the same thing to you. Figure out exactly, get your school committee interviews scheduled. Because if we say to you, you're competing for these 2 candidates, you might say, we need to move a little faster on this, or we're going to lose both, that type of thing. Any questions about that? We'll keep you apprised of those things. Hopefully we won't surprise you with it. But we're providing you the timeline so that you can take a look at your schedules, you can see what you need to do. When it's determining time for the days in the districts, that's when working with somebody in the central office who can coordinate with principals, figure out like even when the focus groups should be and when the days in the district should be. That's when you really should have somebody, Vicki, if you're our liaison, that you work with in the district.
So Carolyn, I have a question. It's purely hypothetical, and I don't mean to imply that we would want to dramatically speed up the process, but if we were to decide that we wanted to dramatically speed up the process for whatever reason. It may be for making sure we nail down the candidates sooner, or maybe it's for avoiding some sort of conflict in the procedures and the things we're doing with the budget discussions with the towns, those types of things. What are the areas of the schedule that you would recommend we compress or eliminate in order to achieve an expedited schedule?
If I had to say, I would say take a look at the interviewing time that the screening committee has and see if you want to make a decision as a district to say, if you choose to be on the interviewing, the screening committee, we've set aside 2 days and staff will have coverage and it will be Thursday and Friday, December, whatever. You know, that may be one area. Another would be to say, we want 5 weeks of float time for advertisement. Another would be to make sure that your process is crisp too. So I don't know. You'd have to look, because between now and when they meet in November 16th, that seems a long time, but it's a month and 2 weeks, and that will give us time to run the focus groups, write the profile, choose the screening committee, you know, all of that. So I would say, Sean, that a good 30% of the searches go longer than we have recommended, and the time where they start to stretch out longer than they should is once the school committee gets it, because that's a busy time and coordinating it. And if sometimes with the screening committee, because they cannot, unless you emphasize, you need to have time available in order to serve. Sometimes that's difficult there.
This
So
is also a pretty aggressive timeline. And so if you need to shorten it in any way, I think we really would probably have to take a look at where are we in the process now and what can we do without, because most of the things that are on here probably shouldn't be eliminated.
Yeah.
So the real question is, how important is it that we speed up the process? And if so, then I think we have to be specific as to where are we in the process and what can we do without between now and the end. But it's a pretty aggressive timeline as it is.
Right. So it would be sort of hurry up, get your letter out and choose whom you're going to have for focus groups, get them right, and let us get started on the profile. It's like maybe push it back in that way, and then have things come into you. But you'll take a look at the timeline and make your suggestions to Vicki. And you just don't want to have too short of a recruiting time. Now, recruiting in the public sector is different than recruiting in the private sector. In the private sector, you can invite somebody for an interview. You can call them up and say, you've told us you're looking, or someone in MURSD has said, Carolyn, Michael, call so-and-so, they're terrific. Well, we can only invite them to apply. We can't even say they're going to get an interview. We have to be able to guarantee them confidentiality in the screening process, or a lot of people won't even bother. But we can't say, gee, if you apply, you'll get an interview with the school committee. I can't even do that. So it's a little bit different recruiting, and these people have jobs. So that's why we need to be very careful about mentioning names and very professional in our recruiting activities, but we will engage in them. Was there another question, Michael, or was that?
I'm just going to jump in here really quickly and just say, I've worked in public schools for an awfully long time and have been through this process several different times and have served on some of these search committees. And I want to sort of reemphasize that I think the best way for us to move through this process efficiently is to set aside dates from the start when things are going to happen. Those searches that I've been a part of that do that from the very beginning, with the expectation that this is when the screening committee will meet, and if you can't meet then don't sign up. Those are the ones that run most efficiently and sort of stick to the timelines. So I think that as I'm looking sort of for action items for us as a committee, I think we need to add that to our agenda for our meeting on Monday to set those dates so that we can sort of start along, setting this process up to be successful from the beginning. The other question that I want to ask is Vicki, this feels like this is a huge mantle that was just placed on your head. And I'm wondering if we need a search committee so that you have some support. You certainly would be the figurehead of that, but it feels like, especially if we want this to be as smooth a process as possible, and increase the likelihood that we'll stay on this timeline, it sounds like maybe a search committee would be helpful for you.
Yeah, help is good.
Always good. And it's good to make the distinction between a search committee and a screening committee.
Yes.
A search committee would be school committee members as a subcommittee. A screening committee has 20 people on it and is only for a simple project, limited time.
Absolutely. So, and I'm just thinking that especially if we want to get a letter turned around and out, like this sounds like that's something, if we could get a subcommittee together tonight to support Vicki in this Herculean task, that I think that would probably, be a good outcome for tonight. And Vicki, I'm happy to volunteer for that committee to help you out. I don't know if anybody else might want to volunteer.
I've got some cycles that I can give to it, so that'll, I'm happy to participate as well to help shoulder the load.
And as you go through that process, we're here to help you. Don't just, please know that you can call us any time.
We will lean on the two of you quite heavily. I know that.
Yeah, please, we're here.
People do. I want to go back to Sean's question for 1 minute. I was looking at it. We have the school committee the screening committee making some decisions by like December 15th, but then not giving you the names until the 21st. I have to be able to call, Michael has to be able to call and tell the candidates that they're going to be open. But if you want to back that, if you want to say they give you the names before something, to make sure that you announce before the vacation and then have a chance to call references if you want to over that time. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's the search committee might want to take a look at that and walk through the process of the timeline and make some decisions. And you want to be thinking, I don't know how many members make up. Can 2 meet without, is that, or 3 before it's a quorum? I'm just thinking of how many are going to be on the screening committee.
Most of our subcommittees have 3 members. So I think if Carrie, Phil, and myself were the search committee, that would work.
That would work. But what about on the screening committee? You want to be thinking, are there 2 of you or are the 3 of you going to be, again, it's a lot of work. And what you don't want to do is to give the people on the screening committee the impression that their vote really doesn't count because the school committee's large and in charge. But you definitely want to own the search. You definitely, say, we're here, we want to hear you. We're listening, you're going to play my role, you'll facilitate the process.
I mean, do we have to decide on the screening committee tonight, or do you know?
No.
Good.
No. In fact, let's clarify that if we can, Carolyn. On my calendar, we're looking at the screening committee selection by November 9th. Right?
Good.
Am I looking at the right one? Yeah,
we were talking the other day.
Yeah, I know it. I know.
So
Yep.
my copy says
we have
19th, correct?
Yeah.
We have a school committee meeting on.
You all have November 19th?
Sorry, Phil, I can't hear you. What were you trying to say, Phil?
I was just going to say we have a school committee meeting on Monday. So we'll be able to have some of these discussions and, to what Perry said, get dates in there and other things so that we can move forward quickly.
Right.
So,
And I want to speak to Michael's point. Yeah, make sure that your timeline, I had so many drafts of it, make sure, and I will get the final, the final one is in your packet. So take a look at it and some of the dates that I might have. Let me just check it here.
I have November.
I have the 19th, November 19th as the screening committee selection date.
Okay, right.
Okay, so going back to Sean's question, that's the time frame is when we would like to have the screening committee established by. And again, I'll to follow up on Carolyn's discussion earlier, to however you go about it with regard to other people. In other words, you're not going to pick the people. You're going to go to the union reps, or you're going to go to let the administrators pick somebody, et cetera. This commitment is, what this time frame is, and that they need to be committed to those dates once you as a school committee set them. It's going to be very important.
Okay.
Can you clarify for me, since this comes up first in the timeline, the focus group selection? Because we need to make some decisions there, right? And then you kind of take it from there. So what are you going to need? I know you said 4 to 5 focus groups. So how many people does that comprise? And
usually we've been running them, I don't know if you, but we've been running them online. So we say 20, we cut it off at 20 for parents. And if we have what they do is they contact NESDEC, we'll send a link, they contact NESDEC and say that they're interested in, and Christina will send them the link to the Zoom meeting. I'm going to be honest with you. When you run an online survey and then you do focus groups, people are more apt to do the online survey. But again, it's a matter of access. You want to give access. You run the focus groups. Sometimes you might have 4 people show up. Sometimes you might have 24 people show up. So it's hard to know. But I always say do at least 2 parent groups. Have one in the morning or earlier in the day and one in the evening. When you do your ones for your teachers, you may choose to do one on the elementary level and one on the secondary level, or you might choose to do one that goes from, say, 2:30 to 4:30, and they can come on it as their, and you don't put a limit on those. You send them the link, and they choose to join or not join, and they can come in and out based on their dismissal times if it's after school. And with the administrators, same thing. They can have it when they ordinarily would have an administrators meeting. I'll send all that to you, but you want to be thinking about an hour per group. You want to be thinking of, except for the teachers, they might have a 2-hour one kind of thing. And you want to be thinking of who needs to hear. Are you going to have a combined parent community one sometimes, or are you just going to have an evening one for parents, or a morning one for parents and an evening one for parents and community? Because I'll tell you, the people who participate from the community are generally parents anyway. And then this is another important piece. If you have up to 10 people that you really would like us to talk to in person, you might say, it'd be wonderful if they called so-and-so who's the administrative assistant to the superintendent, or it'd be wonderful if they called the chief of police. Not dozens of people, then I'd say make another focus group. But if you have maybe 10 people and you can give us their names, telephone numbers, email addresses, daytime contact information, we'll do that for you too and include them in. So, you have support staff. Are they going to come in on the staff ones, or are you going to run a focus group for support staff? I know that I think your contract says how many 4, but I've yet to work with a district that hasn't had 6, and we don't, I never put in for the extra fees. So be thinking between 4 and 6. And if this is on YouTube, I'm sure the executive director is laughing because he knows me and Michael. So.
want to jump in for just a second here because Eric, I know you need to jump off here in just a second.
Yeah.
Make sure you have a time to ask questions if you need it.
I was actually going to throw one out, Caroline. You kind of hit upon this a few minutes ago, but I just wanted to see if I could double click on it. And I've got zero public experience and all private, but you mentioned like recruiting, right? I guess one of the things I thought I was going to expect you to say is, hey, listen, you know, we've recruited for a bunch of schools in the area and we had some strong runner-ups where it's a school system your size, this and that. They were down to a 1A, 1B. And so we're going to tap this person on the shoulder. Okay. And then I guess my other question is, so as I've sat here the last 10 minutes, I've just kind of been on LinkedIn. Seems like all the area vice or all the area principals are on LinkedIn, but I don't see you guys on LinkedIn.
Right.
Do you guys not like use that as just a way to?
We do. We have private accounts on LinkedIn, and the director is on. Yeah, we're not on as a firm. Again, our procedures are confidential, as low key as we can make them.
Yeah, but that's where LinkedIn is just a great avenue for you to be able to say, hey, listen, if you're connected with 75 principals, you can say, hey guys, I posted this week. That's all you got to say, right?
Yeah.
And then it gives someone a key to, I'm on that hypo path, career-oriented, thinking about the next step. So anyways, I was just.
What Michael's taking notes, I can see him taking notes. So we will talk about that as a team, and certainly.
Okay, cool.
And also, we're everywhere. I mean, I'll be in Connecticut, Arts in New York now, and we are at the superintendent meetings, at their conferences. And not to boast, but other vendors will say, give us the table closest to NESDAQ because they're such a draw. People come over, not necessarily during the superintendent and school committee conference, because they don't, of course, want to tell their school committee that they're looking, but they do on their superintendent. They might come over and say, I'm thinking 2 or 3 years from now, and so we keep track of it. I might be thinking of leaping.
Yeah, so you've got that.
And I'm glad you brought up principals, Eric, because there are communities that hire people who are very talented high school principals or very talented principals, and are, at first are saying, we only want somebody who's been a superintendent. And what I say is, you want somebody that's had the experiences of a superintendent. Maybe they haven't worn the hat, but they've presented to town meeting, they've drawn up budgets, they've hired, fired, supervised, done, and they are very skilled. So that's why you want your profile to be not exclusionary. You want your profile to say, these are the skills we're looking at, and we're willing to look at candidates. Maybe we won't choose them, but we'll want to look at candidates that are skilled.
All right, cool.
Okay. And Eric, anything you can do to recruit, you go ahead and help us. We'll be glad.
Hey, why not? I throw those things on LinkedIn all the time.
Do you know that one community said to me, well, we heard this superintendent and this principal were terrific. Call them. Fine. We'll I mean, we have our own, of course, connections, and we'll be out there.
Sure.
But
okay, perfect. I appreciate hearing that. I was a little concerned when you mentioned it 20 minutes ago that it sounded like it was much more of only a push, but it sounds like you got a push-pull type network on.
Yeah, we do.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, folks, I apologize. I'll let you guys keep going without me. I'll follow up afterwards.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.
All right.
Okay.
I'll turn it over to you, Kerry.
Okay, thanks, Carolyn. I appreciate your presentation. So folks, what is it that we still need to accomplish tonight? It sounds like we've got a search committee to support Vicki. We're going to add some agenda items to Monday so we can get some dates on our calendar. I'm trying to figure out what else we need to, somebody jump in and tell me what I've forgotten, if there's other stuff that we need to do tonight.
On Monday, we'll need to discuss the focus groups.
Yeah.
And then I would even discuss the makeup or structure of the screening committee.
Okay.
Because that looks like that'll be necessary for us to at least start to solicit people that are interested in a variety of different walks of life. I do have one other question, which may be just a general one. I mean, I realize we're a regional school versus maybe a single town-based school. I don't know if there's any kind of, we'll call it guidance or any kind of wisdom you have in terms of the differences of the kind of person we may be looking for, how we may be looking for them.
Well, we do a lot of work with regional school districts, and it's true. There's more school committee meetings. Sometimes, you have to look at the dynamics between towns, and that's what we'll try to tease out, and how you operate as a group, which is obviously very good. And candidates look at that to see, are there, sometimes in regional communities, you have to look at the politics between the two towns and budget decisions and things like that. But yes and no. Sometimes if the person hasn't worked in a regional school district, then you really need to hit hard with those questions during screening and interviews. Like, ask them, what are the differences? What do you think it's going to be? What experiences? How can we feel confident that you have the skills to make that type of a leap, kind of things, and we'll be talking to you. But there are differences. Some of the basic skills of communication and outreach are the same. It also depends on your unique district makeup, like what expertise do you already have in place. Whether you're looking for somebody with a real finance background, or do you have strong curriculum guidance already in the district, or you're looking for this or that. There's a number of regional school districts that are looking for that finance piece.
It occurs to me, just to follow on from your question, Phil, it occurs to me that in a focus group, you need some narrowing in order for the focus group to be relevant to our communities. So it occurs to me that you probably need some sort of outline from the school committee on where the focus group should be. I mean, not completely narrow so that you're not exploring all the areas, but narrow enough so you understand about the town makeup, the priorities of the communities that we've seen. And if you have that as a supporting artifact, then you can go into the focus groups and validate it or invalidate it and try to come up with some discussions around those topics that we identify. Does that fit?
Well, what we have, and I've heard you, Sean, I need to process it. What we have is two questions that we ask, and we say to them, from where you sit, from either a teacher or an administrator, parent, what do you think are the knowledge, skills, qualities, characteristics, experiences that the district needs in a superintendent? What does he and she need to be able to do and know in order to be successful here? And that comes out in the discussion, the things that you're talking about. And then we say, what would you like him or her to focus on in the first year or have a heads up about? And that gets at other issues. So if people have something they want to say and they want to go off topic, they do, and that's fine. We record it all. But we try to focus on the future rather than do an analysis of your district. We're not doing a needs assessment of your district. We're saying, what do you need in a superintendent? And we're going to ask you that too. And that's why you don't want to go off pie in the sky and say, we need somebody fun, and of course, we need somebody nice, because fine, everybody who applies will consider themselves fun and nice. You really want to talk about what it is that you need for somebody to come in and be successful and work well in your district. So you have to think about what you're really looking for. And we try to tease that out and give that to you as a school committee. And then, Sean, when you get all of that data and we're developing the final document, the school committee will say things like you're saying, could you add a paragraph here about this? Because this is critical from my perspective.
Okay, that's good. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. If we as school committee members are not participating in the focus groups, how are our thoughts, views being captured in this process?
Well, you will have a focus group, but it will be at the end, okay. And you'll have all of the data to inform that discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate having the raw data. That's excellent.
Yeah,
and you'll prepare
because
that profile.
we develop we look at the data, we give it to you, and we say to us, this is what we're hearing, this is what we're seeing. And you might say at that meeting, well, I heard this very strongly. We need to add something about that in here. And then no one spoke to this, but I think it's critical. And you as a committee will say, yeah, let's add something about that, or let's take out that section. We don't want to go there.
Understood.
Yeah. So by Monday, you probably want to as a group, approve the letter that the search committee drafts, so that it can come to either search committee can either write a letter and send it to Christina by Friday or whatever it is, and she'll format it, make it look nice, and send it back to you for Monday's approval. Or if you don't think you can do it that fast, then that's fine. But,
I get into a couple other things just for you to keep in mind. That you don't have to decide on tonight or within the next couple of days, but certainly by the time we advertise, and whatever contract you're going to have for that superintendent, whether that's a 3-year contract or whatever that might look like, what the salary range is going to be, because once we start advertising, we start getting these questions. And so you might want to be thinking about that, and whether if you have a job description, also should be thinking of putting up a district website with regard to the superintendent search specifically, and then we can keep the community involved as we go through the process, and we can change that as we go. So there are a few things to keep in mind. And you probably should start that process now. That so for example, on the website, you might put, we have opened up the search. We were discussing, the school committee has had a meeting to discuss the search for a new superintendent. This is where we're at. The school committee is in the process of developing the material. However you word all that, but begin the process so that people can start knowing, number one, that it's there, and number two, that they can keep track of what's going on. But we'll get questions from candidates once we start advertising with regard to, the job itself, the school itself, the community itself, and things about salary and those kinds of things. Sometimes people don't ask, so
majority do.
I think what that range is going to be.
So it would be nice, honestly, it would be nice to have some sort of understanding of what you guys believe the salary ranges should be as well.
Yeah, we can talk about that offline.
Yeah.
But what you really want to do is take a look at your current contract for your superintendent and talk with, if you have legal counsel or however you want, and start thinking about as a committee, what type of contract you're thinking about offering the candidates. We don't need to know tonight. And there's a to Michael's point, there'll be a sentence in the recruitment letter, and generally it says MURSD will offer a salary commensurate with skills and a regionally competitive salary, however you want to do it. But somebody's going to call us and say, especially when we're talking to finalists, whether their name is going to be moved forward, they're going to say, well, I get $250,000 in my current position, and we need to be able, we don't say anything to them, but we need to be able to say to you, we're not sure you can land some of your finalists, maybe you don't even want to announce them, or whatever. So we would be expecting to hear from you a regionally competitive salary, and we can help you with that, like what we're seeing that it is.
Yeah, good. I like that. I like that idea a lot better than advertising a starting salary to begin. Yeah.
Yeah. Because Michael's correct. We need to know early enough in the process so that people don't go through the whole application and screening committee and then back out on you when they hear the salary. We need to know a little bit. Or else be able to say to them, it's regionally competitive, do some research yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay.
And what was the other thing you said, Michael? It was important.
We'll talk about the website, and then also any other documents that you might have that you think might be helpful to a candidate with regards to if you want to post anything about a budget summary or an organizational chart or anything along those lines.
Well,
Yeah,
or
we're-
the school strategy, probably the 5-year strategy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anything
very
you
important.
might want to have links on that search website for candidates and community members. You know, they can go on, they can take a look at whatever it is. We used to say that when candidates showed up for their interview, you'd have a green room where they wait, and you have those documents there so that while they wait, we tell them to show up 15 minutes early at least, and they sit there and they look through the budget. But you also want to have that same easy access to information online and see if it is online so that they can take a look at the budget. They can take a look at the, I clicked through your website. You have some, it's nicely done, and there's some good information about the schools and everything on there. So a few tweaks. And then a lot of districts don't have job descriptions, but if you have one, make sure it's updated and make sure your contract is updated.
Is the search website something that NESDEC puts together or that we're responsible for putting together? And who, like, where would we?
You would,
Your website.
you would ask someone in central office, whoever does your website, whoever your tech person is, and say, we want a category called superintendent search, and we'll give you the information and you get it up there. For instance, we're going, like Michael said, we're going to be looking at setting up focus groups. We're going to be looking at down the line, you know, by X, we're going to be looking at setting up a screening committee, and we'll be giving you information on this website about how that's evolving.
Okay, thank you.
And then we usually put on the NESDEC website, we usually put a link to your website and vice versa. Yeah.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay, do we have any more questions, group? I feel like I'm with you, Carolyn. I'm going to need some time to process all of this and take it all in.
Yeah.
So sounds like we have a plan. If we don't have any more questions, I think we probably need, those of us who are going to sit on the search committee, we need to pick a date, it sounds like, to meet, to at least talk about that letter as soon as we can.
It might be good to meet prior to the school committee meeting on Monday.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Post for that tomorrow, and then we can meet, and that way we can bring the letter and other stuff. And if other members have comments on it, because you've done a great job sending it out to everybody, Vicki.
Yeah.
And right, and we'll help you if you say, I wonder how this will look.
That, and then we consolidate.
Right. I mean, and you can send it to Christina, you know, as a almost final draft, and she'll send it back to you however you want to do it.
Okay, so Monday's going to be a busy night for us, it sounds like. Leave some time in your evenings, everybody.
The beginning of the process.
Yeah.
And did you had the timeline in the letter, is that right? And thinking about focus groups, and then I think you can take a breath and then be thinking about the screening committee and things like that. And the website for Monday night too, maybe. Who's gonna?
Yeah, because we can probably reach out to Dave Quinn, Carrie, and he can help us with the website and what would have to be done. Because I know they've done a great job, I think, updating a couple different areas already.
And then looking way ahead, because for the vibe I'm getting is that you do want a very efficient search. You need a place for the screening committee to meet. And you have to decide whether it's going to be in person or are they meeting like this. And you also then, they will be interviewing candidates. And candidates, we need to give them a confidential way of entering and leaving the site. So you don't want to have it in the high school library right after school where people can see who's coming in and out unless there's an entrance to the library from the street or something. So you want to be thinking about where you're going to hold your screening committee and the venue. And, you know, is there a green room someplace when candidates arrive? Where are they going to wait? And then how are they going to leave, or are they going to be passing each other in the hallways, and we even go so far when they're in executive session as to say, can people walk down the corridor and look in and see the charts and see the discussion, or is there a way to have shades, or to have, because they're in executive session? Something to think about. You can have it on campus, you can have it off campus, you can choose your venue. Okay.
Okay, don't forget, call anytime.
Yeah, Vicki, you feel free to share our contact information with committee members.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank you so much for presenting.
Thank you.